It started on a Tuesday evening, the kind of day when nothing feels out of the ordinary. I was rummaging through the drawers in our shared bedroom, searching for a flash drive I needed for a work presentation. It wasn't in its usual spot, so I dug deeper, pulling open the lower drawer, then moving on to her vanity, the small drawers packed with her cosmetics and trinkets. No luck. Frustrated, I checked the trash bin beside her nightstand. That's when I saw them. 6 used condoms. I froze. My hands trembled as I pulled the bin closer, staring at the evidence. The used condoms sat there, mocking me, daring me to question everything I thought I knew about my wife, Emily. A deep chill ran down my spine as my brain struggled to process what I was looking at. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. Who? When? Why? The air in the room seemed to thicken as my thoughts spiraled. I had been married to Emily for 8 years. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never thought I'd stumble across something so blatantly repulsive, so utterly disrespectful. I slumped onto the bed, staring at the trash bin as if it were some cursed artifact. My mind raced through the past few months, searching for signs I might have missed. Emily had been acting differently lately, staying out late with vague excuses about work dinners, hiding her phone, and brushing off my attempts to connect. But I had ignored it, convincing myself I was overthinking. Not anymore. The rational part of me urged caution, telling me to wait, gather evidence, and approach this with a clear head. But the overwhelming flood of anger and humiliation drowned out any rationality. I grabbed my phone, swiping through her texts and photos, praying it was some sick misunderstanding. Nothing stood out, no suspicious messages or incriminating photos. It was almost as if she had covered her tracks too well. I couldn't sit there any longer. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Emily! I shouted, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. She appeared at the doorway a few moments later, her face set in that infuriatingly calm mask she always wore when I was upset. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and she held her phone loosely in one hand, looking at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "What is it, Ben?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. I didn't bother with pleasantries. Instead, I held up the trash bin, my hand trembling. "Do you want to explain this?" Her eyes flicked to the condoms for the briefest second before she shrugged, her expression unfazed. "What about it? What about it?" I repeated, my voice rising. 6 used condoms in our bedroom trash, Emily. Are you seriously going to act like this is normal? Her reaction was like a slap to the face. She smirked, and said in the most nonchalant tone, "Oh, Ben, don't overreact. It doesn't mean anything. I still love only you." The words hit me like a freight train. I felt my world collapsing around me as she continued, her tone dripping with casual cruelty. "In fact," she said with a sly smile, "you could join us sometime if you're feeling adventurous." Join them. The sheer audacity of her words stunned me into silence. My vision blurred with a red haze as the room tilted. This wasn't real. This wasn't happening. When I found my voice again, it came out as a low growl. "Who is he?" Emily rolled her eyes, as if I were asking about the weather. "Relax, Ben. It's not that serious. Not that serious. 6 used condoms. In our bedroom. Not that serious." I saw red. My hands clenched into fists, and for a brief, terrifying moment, I considered punching a hole through the wall. Instead, I grabbed her phone. She didn't even try to stop me, just crossed her arms and watched as I scrolled through her call logs and messages. Then I saw it, a video saved under a file name I didn't recognize. My heart pounded as I opened it. The screen lit up with my wife in our bed, tangled with some guy whose face I didn't recognize. My bed. My home. My life. Her laughter echoed in the background of the video as my body went numb. My mind screamed at me to smash the phone, to erase the proof, but I couldn't look away. When the video ended, I turned to her, my voice eerily calm. You've been cheating on me in our home. In our bed. And you think I should relax? Emily shrugged again, completely unbothered. Like I said, it's not a big deal. It doesn't change how I feel about you. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I stood frozen, Emily's words echoing in my mind like a twisted mantra. It doesn't change how I feel about you. How could someone be so cold, so detached from the destruction they'd caused? Her nonchalant attitude lit a fuse inside me that I didn't even know existed. Not a big deal? I repeated, my voice calm in a way that even scared me. You think destroying our marriage, humiliating me in my own home, is no big deal? Emily rolled her eyes, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. God, Ben, why do you have to be so dramatic? It's just physical. You know how things can get boring after a while. She waved her hand dismissively, as if she were talking about a bad haircut and not the complete betrayal of our vows. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, I focused on her face, calm, unbothered, even a little smug. What's his name? I demanded, stepping closer. Why does it matter? She replied, her tone dripping with disdain. It's not like you know him. Try me, I snapped, my voice shaking. She sighed heavily, as if I were the one inconveniencing her. Fine. His name is Josh. Josh. The name burned into my mind like a brand. I wanted to find this guy, confront him, make him feel the pain that was tearing through my chest like 1,000 knives. Where did you meet him? She hesitated, her composure slipping just slightly. At work. That was when it clicked. Josh, the new sales rep she'd casually mentioned a few months back. The one she insisted was just a coworker, when I noticed how often his name came up in conversations. I felt sick. How long has this been going on? She looked at me with a mix of annoyance and pity, as if I were some clueless child asking too many questions. Does it really matter, Ben? You're just torturing yourself. I stepped closer, my voice low and sharp. How long? She shrugged, her mask of indifference firmly back in place. A few months. A few months. All this time, she'd been coming home to me, kissing me, lying next to me in the same bed where she was screwing someone else. The weight of it was unbearable, but I wasn't done. Do you even feel guilty? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Emily stared at me for a moment, as if considering her answer. Then she smiled, a small, cruel smile that sent a shiver down my spine. Not really. You're so boring, Ben. Always so predictable, so stuck in your routines. I needed something exciting. Her words hit like a punch to the gut, knocking the air out of my lungs. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, stable, supportive, reliable. Now she was throwing it back in my face like it was a flaw. And you didn't think to talk to me? To tell me you were unhappy? I asked, my voice cracking. What would have been the point? She shot back. You wouldn't have changed. You can't even handle this conversation without falling apart. That was it. I couldn't take another second of her smug, dismissive attitude. Without thinking, I grabbed my phone and started recording. What are you doing? She asked, her calm demeanor faltering for the first time. Getting this on record, I said, my voice hard. So when I file for divorce, the court knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Emily's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger crossing her face. Don't be ridiculous, Ben. You're not going to divorce me. You don't have the guts. Watch me, I snapped, my fingers flying over my phone screen as I sent the video of her admission to my email. Her expression shifted, her confidence cracking. Okay, you're taking this way too far. You don't need to ruin everything over one mistake. One mistake? I laughed bitterly. This wasn't a mistake, Emily. It was a choice. Over and over again, you chose to betray me, to disrespect me, to bring that scumbag into our home. And you expect me to just what, ignore it? Forgive you? She crossed her arms, her lips curling into a sneer. Maybe if you weren't so pathetic, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere. Her words hit like a slap to the face, but instead of crumbling, I felt something inside me harden. You know what? I said, my voice steady. I've had enough. Pack your things and get out. Her eyes widened in surprise. Excuse me? You heard me, I said, my voice firm. I want you out of my house. Tonight. For the first time, Emily looked genuinely taken aback. You can't just throw me out. This is my home too. Not anymore, I said coldly. You made your choice, Emily. Now you get to live with it. Her bravado faltered, but she quickly recovered, her face twisting into a mask of anger. Fine, she spat. But don't think for a second you're coming out of this unscathed. I'll make sure everyone knows what a controlling, boring loser you are. Do whatever you want, I replied, my voice calm. You've already shown the world exactly who you are. As she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, I felt a strange mix of emotions, pain, anger, and a sliver of something that felt like relief. I wasn't sure what came next, but one thing was clear, I was done letting her control my life. The house was eerily quiet after Emily stormed out of the bedroom. I stood there, still gripping my phone, my mind buzzing with adrenaline and rage. But beneath the anger, there was a gnawing emptiness. This wasn't just the end of a fight, it felt like the end of my entire life as I knew it. I couldn't stay in that room any longer. Every corner felt tainted, our bed, the dresser, even the photos on the wall seemed to mock me. I grabbed my car keys and left the house, needing air, space, anything but that suffocating silence. Driving aimlessly through the dark streets, I found myself pulling into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. The neon sign flickered, casting a pale blue glow across the cracked asphalt. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and fried food greeted me, strangely comforting in its normalcy. I sat in a booth by the window, staring at the menu but not really seeing it. My mind was stuck on Emily's words, her smug face, the casual way she dismantled everything we'd built together. Can I get you something, hon? The waitress asked, startling me out of my thoughts. Coffee, I said. As she walked away, I noticed a man sitting at the counter, hunched over a plate of pancakes. He looked familiar, but it took a moment for the pieces to click. Josh. It was him. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. I couldn't believe my luck, or maybe it was fate. I didn't know whether to confront him, follow him, or just sit there and stew in my rage. But as I watched him laugh and joke with the waitress, completely oblivious to the chaos he'd caused, something inside me snapped. I got up and walked over to the counter. He didn't notice me at first, too busy flirting with the waitress. But when I cleared my throat, his head turned, and his face froze. Josh, right? I said, my voice calm but cold. He blinked, clearly caught off guard. Yeah. Do I know you? You should, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I'm Ben. Emily's husband. His face went pale, and for a moment, I thought he might bolt. But he quickly recovered, plastering on a fake, confident smile. Hey, man, look, I didn't know she was married. She told me. Save it, I interrupted, holding up a hand. I'm not here for your excuses. I just wanted to see the guy who thought it was a good idea to screw another man's wife. He swallowed hard, glancing around like he was hoping for an escape. Look, I don't want any trouble, okay? It's over. Whatever was going on with her, I'm done. Over? I repeated, laughing bitterly. You think this ends just because you're done? You've been screwing my wife in my bed for months, and you're going to sit here and pretend you're the victim? His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he might say something smart. But he didn't. Instead, he stood up, throwing a few bills on the counter. I'm sorry, man, he said, his voice low. I didn't know. If I had, I never. Don't, I snapped. Just don't. You knew enough. And trust me, this isn't over. He froze, his hand on the door handle, and for a second, I thought he might argue. But he didn't. He just left, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding. The waitress was watching me with wide eyes, clearly unsure whether to intervene or call the cops. I forced myself to take a deep breath, nodding to her before heading back to my booth. The coffee was cold when I finally took a sip, but I didn't care. I needed to think, to figure out my next move. When I got home, the house was dark, and Emily's car was gone. For a moment, I felt a flicker of relief, thinking she'd actually left. But when I walked into the living room, I saw her suitcase by the door. She hadn't left, she was waiting. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. When she saw me, she raised an eyebrow. Back so soon? She asked, her tone dripping with sarcasm. I saw him, I said, ignoring her question. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Who? Josh, I said. At the diner. She didn't flinch, didn't even look surprised. Instead, she smirked. And? Did you bond over how awful I am? I stared at her, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. You're unbelievable, you know that? And you're predictable, she shot back. What did you think, Ben? That confronting him would change anything? He's just a guy. You're the one I married. You're the one who's supposed to keep me interested. Her words were like a slap to the face, but this time, I didn't let her see how much they hurt. Instead, I nodded slowly. You're right, I said, my voice calm. I am predictable. And that's why you didn't see this coming. Her smirk faltered, just slightly, as I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit play. The video of her and Josh filled the room, her laughter echoing back at her like a ghost. Her face went pale, and for the first time, I saw something that looked like fear in her eyes. What are you doing? She asked, her voice tight. Making sure you don't weasel your way out of this, I said. You're done, Emily. You want excitement? You've got it. But don't think for a second you're taking me down with you. Emily's face morphed from smug confidence to pale fear as she watched the video play on my phone. Her laughter from the recording, once so carefree and mocking, now hung in the room like a curse. For the first time that night, she was speechless. Turn that off, she finally said, her voice shaky. Why? I asked, my tone as icy as the air between us. You weren't shy when you were making it. What's the matter? Can't face your own actions? She lunged for the phone, but I stepped back, holding it just out of reach. Don't even think about it, I warned. You've had your fun, Emily. Now it's my turn. Her eyes narrowed, and the fear gave way to anger. You're such a child, Ben. Playing games instead of having a grown-up conversation. Games? I echoed, laughing bitterly. You're the one who turned our marriage into a game, Emily. Sneaking around, lying, laughing in my face while you betrayed me. Did you think there wouldn't be consequences? She folded her arms, her defiance returning. What do you want, Ben? You want me to grovel? Cry? Beg you to take me back? Because that's not happening. Good, I snapped. Because that's not what I want. I want you out of my life. Out of this house. Out of everything. Her jaw tightened, and she opened her mouth to argue, but before she could get a word out, the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside caught our attention. Who's that? She asked, her voice suddenly wary. No idea, I said, walking to the window. A sleek black SUV pulled into the driveway, its headlights cutting through the darkness. My stomach clenched as the driver's door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. He wasn't Josh. This guy looked older, tougher, with a no-nonsense air about him. What the hell? Emily muttered, moving to stand behind me. The man knocked on the door, firm and deliberate. I glanced at Emily, who looked genuinely confused for the first time all night. I opened the door just a crack, keeping the chain in place. Can I help you? Ben Carter, the man asked, his voice deep and authoritative. I hesitated. Who's asking? He reached into his jacket and pulled out a badge. Detective Harris. I'm with the local police department. My heart dropped into my stomach. What's this about? I need to speak with both of you, he said, glancing over my shoulder at Emily. Emily stepped forward, her face a mix of curiosity and irritation. What's going on? Can I come in? Harris asked. I nodded slowly, unhooking the chain and stepping aside. Harris walked in, his sharp eyes taking in the room, the tension between me and Emily clearly not lost on him. I'll get straight to the point, he said, pulling out a small notebook. We received a tip about some extracurricular activities happening at this address. Specifically, activities involving a certain Joshua Palmer. Emily's face turned white. What does that mean? I asked, my voice steady but my mind racing. Harris raised an eyebrow. Joshua Palmer is currently under investigation for a string of scams and fraudulent activities, including blackmail. He's been targeting married women, recording, compromising material, and using it to extort them. My blood ran cold. You're saying he... Mr. Carter, Harris interrupted, do you know if Mr. Palmer has ever filmed anything private involving your wife? I couldn't speak. My mind flashed to the video I'd found, the one Emily had so carelessly saved on her phone. Was she in on this? Or was she just another one of his victims? Emily finally found her voice. I didn't know anything about that, she said, her voice trembling. Josh never mentioned anything like that. He said he just wanted to have fun. Fun? I snapped, glaring at her. Is that what you call this? Harris held up a hand. Let's stay focused. Mrs. Carter, if you have any videos or photos involving Mr. Palmer, I strongly advise you to hand them over now. It'll help us build a case against him. Emily hesitated, glancing at me. I didn't wait for her. I grabbed her phone from the coffee table and handed it to Harris. Check this, I said. There's a video saved under a random file name. It might be what you're looking for. Emily gasped, reaching for the phone, but Harris stepped back. Thank you, Mr. Carter. This will be very helpful. Her eyes burned with fury as she turned on me. You had no right. Enough, I snapped. You're lucky I didn't hand over everything else I know about you. Harris cleared his throat, drawing our attention. I'll need both of you to come down to the station tomorrow to give statements. In the meantime, I suggest you both take a long, hard look at the choices that brought you here. Without another word, he left, leaving the room in tense silence. Emily rounded on me the second the door closed. How dare you, she hissed. How dare I? I shot back, my voice rising. You brought this into our lives, Emily. You let that scumbag into our home, our bed. And now, because of you, we're tangled up in a police investigation." Her face twisted with anger, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she grabbed her suitcase and stormed toward the door. "Where are you going?" I demanded. "Anywhere but here," she spat, slamming the door behind her. For the first time that night, the house was quiet. Truly quiet. I sat down on the couch, my body shaking as the events of the night finally caught up to me. This wasn't the ending I had expected. But maybe it was the one I needed. The silence after Emily's departure was suffocating. For a brief moment, I thought the worst was behind me. She was gone, Detective Harris had the video, and I could start rebuilding what little remained of my life. But deep down, I knew this was far from over. Something still didn't sit right. I couldn't shake the look on Emily's face when Harris mentioned blackmail. There was more to this story, more to her. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat at the kitchen table, staring at her abandoned suitcase near the door. My mind raced through everything I'd learned that night. Who was Emily, really? Had she known about Josh's schemes, or was she just another pawn? And if she was innocent in that regard, why hadn't she come clean about the affair when she had the chance? Curiosity burned through my exhaustion. I knew there had to be more hidden on her phone or laptop. Harris had taken the phone, but her laptop was still here, tucked in her office. If she had secrets, that's where they'd be. I hesitated, the beer cold in my hand. Part of me felt like a vulture picking at the remains of our marriage. But after everything she'd done, did I owe her privacy? No. I owed myself the truth. Emily's office smelled faintly of her perfume, a sickening reminder of what I was about to uncover. Her laptop sat on the desk, glowing softly in sleep mode. I opened it, my heart pounding. The password screen stared back at me, but I knew Emily better than she realized. I typed in her usual combination, our wedding date, followed by her initials. The screen unlocked instantly. Her desktop was cluttered with icons, but one folder caught my eye, Work Docs, Private. The word private felt like an invitation. I double-clicked, and my stomach tightened. Inside were dozens of subfolders, each labeled with a name, John, Mike, Paul, and more. My name wasn't among them. My hands shook as I clicked the first folder. It was filled with photos, videos, and emails, all incriminating. Emily wasn't just having an affair with Josh. She'd been involved with multiple men over the past few years, each folder detailing their interactions in excruciating detail. Dinner reservations, hotel receipts, explicit messages, it was all there. I felt like I was drowning, each new discovery dragging me deeper. The woman I thought I'd known for 8 years wasn't just unfaithful, she was a serial manipulator. But then, things took an even darker turn. I opened a folder labeled Josh and found something unexpected, a spreadsheet. It listed names, dates, and dollar amounts. At first, I couldn't make sense of it. But as I scrolled, it clicked. These were payments, money she'd received from these men. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was running some kind of scam, using these relationships to extort money from them. My hands went cold as I realized the scope of her betrayal. This wasn't just about us. Emily was involved in something much bigger, and much darker. I leaned back in the chair, the room spinning around me. My mind replayed every argument, every excuse, every late-night work dinner. How could I have been so blind? The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. My heart leaped into my throat. It was almost midnight, who could it be? I crept to the front door and peeked through the peephole. A man stood on the porch, his face shadowed by the dim light. He wasn't a cop, and he wasn't Josh. I opened the door just a crack. "Who are you?" I demanded. "You're Ben, right?" the man said, his voice low. I nodded, my grip tightening on the door. "I need to talk to you," he said. "About Emily." I let him in, my gut screaming that this was a bad idea. But curiosity won out. He introduced himself as Mark, one of the men listed in Emily's folders. "She screwed me over," he said bluntly, his face etched with anger and exhaustion. "And I'm guessing she did the same to you." "She's my wife," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Mark's eyes widened. "Your wife?" He shook his head, letting out a low whistle. "Man, I thought I had it bad, but you've been living with a snake." He laid it all out. Emily had seduced him, gained his trust, and then started asking for loans to cover fabricated emergencies. When he stopped giving her money, she threatened to expose their affair to his family and employer. He'd finally cut her off, but not before losing thousands. "She's dangerous," Mark said, his voice grim. "And if she's tied up with Josh, you're in even deeper than you think. That guy's bad news, fraud, blackmail, even some whispers about violence." My head spun. Emily wasn't just a liar or a cheater, she was a predator. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice hollow. "I want her stopped," Mark said. "People like her don't quit unless someone makes them. And since you're married to her, you've got leverage. Take her down before she destroys someone else." I stared at him, my mind racing. I'd spent the night thinking Emily's betrayal was the worst of it. But now I realized the true depth of her deceit, and the danger it posed to everyone she touched. For the first time, my anger turned into something sharper. Emily had made me feel powerless, but now I saw an opportunity to take control. "I'll handle it," I said, my voice steady. Mark nodded, his expression grim. "Good luck. You're gonna need it." As he left, I stood in the doorway, the cool night air biting at my skin. I didn't know how yet, but I was going to bring Emily down. Not just for me, but for everyone she'd hurt. The next morning, I woke up with a grim sense of purpose. The devastation Emily had caused in my life, and in the lives of others, wasn't something I could let slide. She hadn't just betrayed me, she had used and discarded people like they were nothing. Mark's story had confirmed what I already suspected: Emily was far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. After making a pot of coffee, I sat down at the kitchen table and started drafting a plan. If I was going to stop her, I needed to be smart, strategic. Detective Harris already had the video evidence of her affair with Josh, but that wouldn't be enough. Her web of manipulation had to be exposed entirely, her scams, her lies, everything. I started by calling Mark. "I've been thinking," I said when he answered. "If Emily's blackmailing you, she's probably doing it to others. Do you have any proof?" There was a pause on the line. "Yeah," Mark said finally. "Emails, texts, even a couple of recorded calls. She didn't know I was documenting everything." "Good," I said. "Send it all to me. We're going to use it." By midday, I had a collection of damning evidence from Mark, emails where Emily promised to keep their secret in exchange for money, recordings of her thinly veiled threats, and screenshots of financial transactions. But I wasn't done yet. I called a lawyer, a sharp and no-nonsense woman named Julia, who came highly recommended by a friend. After laying out the situation, she didn't mince words. "Your wife is committing fraud and extortion," Julia said. "You could go to the police with this, but if you want to protect yourself, and make sure she doesn't come after you during the divorce, you'll need leverage." "Leverage?" "Get her to admit everything," Julia said. "On record. If you can do that, we can bury her legally and financially." That afternoon, I set the trap. I texted Emily, knowing exactly how to push her buttons. "Me, we need to talk." Emily, about what? Me, about what happens next. "I've been thinking, and maybe I overreacted." Her reply came almost immediately. "Emily, really? You're finally seeing reason? I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to play the part. Me, yeah. Let's meet tonight and figure this out. I picked a neutral location, a quiet bar downtown where I knew the staff wouldn't pry. I arrived early, setting up a discreet recording device in my pocket. My heart pounded as I waited, the weight of what I was about to do pressing down on me. Emily walked in 15 minutes late, her expression a mix of irritation and smugness. She was dressed to impress, as if she thought she could charm her way out of this. You actually look good for once, she said as she slid into the booth across from me. I ignored the jab, keeping my voice calm. I've been thinking about what you said. About how things got stale between us. Her lips curled into a smile. So you're ready to admit your part in this? I nodded, hating myself for the lie. I've made mistakes, sure. But I also think we can fix this if we're honest with each other. Her expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. Honest, huh? Yes, I said, leaning forward. Let's put everything on the table. No more secrets. Tell me about Josh. Tell me about the money. Her eyes narrowed, and for a second, I thought she'd see through me. But then she laughed, a low, bitter sound. Josh was fun, she said, swirling the straw in her drink. He made me feel alive. And the money? That was just survival, Ben. You think I could live the life I wanted on your salary? Her words hit like a slap, but I stayed focused. So, you've been supplementing our income? If you want to call it that, she said with a smirk. It's not like I hurt anyone. Those men knew what they were getting into. They wanted me, and I made them pay for the privilege. And the blackmail? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She hesitated, her smirk faltering. That's a harsh word, don't you think? I prefer to think of it as an incentive for them to stay quiet. I nodded, my stomach churning. And how long have you been doing this? Does it matter? She snapped. Long enough to know what I'm doing. You're not the first to underestimate me, Ben. But if you play your cards right, we can still salvage this. You'd be surprised how forgiving people can be when there's money involved. Her casual cruelty was staggering, but I kept my composure. So, you'd be willing to share the details? Maybe we can come up with a plan together. She raised an eyebrow. A plan for what? To make sure no one else finds out, I said, choosing my words carefully. If this got out, it could ruin both of us. Her smile returned, sly and confident. Now you're thinking like a partner. I leaned back, the weight of her words sinking in. I had everything I needed. When I got home, I immediately sent the recording to Julia and Detective Harris. Emily's arrogance had given me exactly what I needed, a full confession. By the time I went to bed, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks, a sense of control. Emily had underestimated me, but now, the tables were turning. The storm wasn't over yet, but I was ready for whatever came next. The next day began with a cold, calculated focus. I sent the recordings and evidence to Julia, who responded almost instantly with a call. This is airtight, Julia said, her tone sharp and assured. The confession, the blackmail records, this is enough to sink her in both criminal and civil court. But there's one problem. What's that? I asked, gripping the phone tightly. She's slippery. If she suspects what's coming, she'll bolt or try to destroy evidence. We need to act fast. Her words confirmed what I already suspected, Emily wouldn't go down without a fight. But I had no intention of giving her the upper hand. What do you suggest? Let's hit her with everything at once, Julia said. We'll file for divorce, report her to the authorities for fraud and extortion, and freeze her assets. She won't see it coming. It was a ruthless plan, but Emily deserved nothing less. Do it, I said, my voice resolute. By the afternoon, the gears were already in motion. Julia had filed the necessary paperwork, and Detective Harris had issued a subpoena for Emily's financial records. Meanwhile, I stayed home, waiting for the inevitable explosion. Emily stormed in just after 6 p.m., her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Her face was a mask of fury, her phone clutched in one hand like a weapon. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, waving the screen in my face. It was an email from Julia, notifying her of the divorce filing and freezing of our joint accounts. "This is what happens when you underestimate me," I said, leaning back in my chair. Her eyes narrowed, her usual smugness replaced with raw anger. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think this is going to scare me?" "It's not about scaring you," I replied calmly. "It's about ending this nightmare. You've hurt too many people, Emily. This stops now." She laughed bitterly, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're pathetic, Ben. You think you're some kind of hero? All you've done is ruin yourself. Do you really think you can win against me?" "I don't need to win," I said. "I just need the truth to come out." Her eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite read, fear, perhaps, or maybe just rage. "You have no idea what you've started," she hissed. "I'll make you regret this." The next morning, everything escalated. I woke to a barrage of calls and texts from numbers I didn't recognize, angry messages from some of the men Emily had scammed. "You set me up, you bastard," one voicemail snarled. "Do you know what this is doing to my family?" She's blaming me, I realized, my stomach sinking. Emily had clearly gone on the offensive, spinning her own web of lies to deflect blame. But what she didn't realize was that I had anticipated this. Julia had already warned me to expect a smear campaign. I spent the day documenting everything, every message, every call, every attempt she made to discredit me. By evening, I had enough to strengthen my case against her. But Emily wasn't done. At 9 p.m., the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. 2 police officers stood on the porch, their expressions grim. I opened the door, my heart pounding. "Can I help you?" "Ben Carter," one officer asked. "Yes. We have a warrant to search the premises," the other said, holding up a piece of paper. "What? Why?" "Your wife, Emily Carter, has accused you of harassment and domestic abuse," the first officer said, his tone neutral but firm. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "That's a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "She's trying to frame me." The officer didn't respond, simply stepping past me into the house. For the next hour, they combed through my home, looking for evidence that didn't exist. I could only watch, seething with frustration, as they rifled through my belongings. When they finally left, one of the officers handed me a copy of the warrant. "If you have evidence to refute these claims, I suggest you provide it as soon as possible," he said. "I will," I said, my jaw clenched. That night, I called Julia, explaining what had happened. "She's desperate," Julia said. "This is a common tactic for people like her, throwing mud to see what sticks. But it won't work. The evidence we've gathered is far more compelling than her baseless accusations." "But what if she keeps escalating?" I asked. "What if she doesn't stop until I'm completely destroyed?" "She won't get that chance," Julia said. "Trust me, Ben. By the time we're done, she'll have no room to maneuver." The following days were a whirlwind. Julia filed a countersuit for defamation, and Detective Harris intensified his investigation into Emily's activities. Every piece of evidence we uncovered painted a clearer picture of her crimes. Meanwhile, Emily continued to spiral. She showed up at my workplace, screaming accusations in the parking lot. She called my friends, feeding them lies about me. But with every desperate move she made, she only dug herself deeper. Then, the break came. Harris called me one evening with news that felt like vindication. "We've uncovered financial records linking your wife to multiple fraudulent transactions," he said. "It's enough to charge her with fraud, extortion, and conspiracy." The relief was overwhelming. After weeks of chaos, the tide was finally turning. "That's not all," Harris added. "We also found evidence implicating Josh. He's been running this operation with her from the beginning." As I hung up the phone, a strange calm settled over me. Emily's reign of manipulation was finally coming to an end. But this wasn't just about justice, it was about reclaiming my life. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. The house was still. I sat in the living room, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on me like a lead blanket. Emily's scams, her betrayals, her desperate attempts to ruin me, it all felt like a storm that had finally passed. Detective Harris's call had been the confirmation I needed, her lies were catching up with her. But even with justice on the horizon, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. The next day, I woke up to a knock at the door. It wasn't the aggressive banging I'd come to associate with Emily's dramatics, but a steady, deliberate rap. When I opened it, I found Harris standing there, his face unusually grave. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "What's going on?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "Emily is missing," he said bluntly. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. "What do you mean, missing?" "She didn't show up at her apartment last night. Her car was found abandoned near the edge of town, and her phone is off. We're investigating, but we thought you should know." A strange mixture of relief and dread coursed through me. Emily was gone, but whether that was good or bad remained to be seen. "Do you think she ran?" I asked. "It's possible," Harris said. "But we're not ruling out foul play. People like her make enemies, and Josh Palmer isn't exactly known for his loyalty." The following days were surreal. The news of Emily's disappearance spread quickly, sparking speculation among the people who knew her, or thought they did. Some believed she'd gone into hiding to avoid prosecution. Others whispered about more sinister possibilities. For me, it was like living in a fog. I should have felt vindicated, even triumphant, knowing she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. But instead, I felt hollow. The woman I'd loved, the life I'd built, it was all gone.